Your alternative talk radio contact. The Planet. KGRAradio.com.
With infinite complacency, people went to and fro of the earth about their little affairs, serene in the assurance of their dominion over this small, spinning fragment of solar driftwood, which by chance or design, man has inherited out of the dark mystery of time and space.
Ladies and gentlemen, fans of the spoken word, denizens of the universe, welcome into the fray. My name is Clinton, and usually you hear me at this point of the podcast welcoming you in and telling you how you can become an insider and how you can best follow along with the wild and crazy world of Shannon LeGros. And I'm doing the same thing here, except it's just a little bit different because within the next 24 hours, I am going to complete my mission of terrifying Shannon. Hopefully. If you haven't heard, we're making a documentary called The Devil's Creek about a very strange location in Washington. And thanks to people like yourself, we have reached stage 1, which is actually getting us all up there with a film crew before we don't have access to the location any longer. And I wanted to say thanks, first and foremost, to all of you, even if it is just by you sharing, getting the word out, it means the world to us. I hope you know we'd do the same for you. And then also I wanted to let you know that insiders and people who have contributed to the campaign will be able to get updates, video updates. We're taking some podcast rig stuff up there. We actually have no idea what's going to happen, and that's kind of why it's amazing. But wanted to let you know that I'm going to do my due diligence to terrify this little lady. And I'm pretty confident, if you couldn't already tell. So anyway, if you're interested in following along, obviously pay attention to Into the Fray. Check out devilscreekfilm.com. devilscreekfilm.com. OK Talk Podcast. They have something to do with it too. I'm not exactly sure what. And I'm really excited to bring you precious contraband and ancient tales from distant lands. Thank you so much for everything. And now, I bring you the mysterious, the elusive, the very, very, very special presentation of tonight's episode, featuring Shannon LeGros. Stay tuned.
On this episode of Into the Fray, I have back on with me my very good friend and creator of Small Town Monsters, Seth Breedlove. And on this edition, we are going to talk the Bray Road Beast. Welcome, Seth.
Thank you, Shannon. This feels very this feels
I know,
so
it's way
formal.
too formal.
Thank you,
I was
Shannon,
channeling
for having
George
me on
Knapp.
your
What
show.
can I say? Yes, you better say thank you. No, that was so straight tied right on there. Mm-hmm. No,
So,
thank you for coming back on.
Can I ask a question
Yeah.
to start the show?
Sure.
Okay. What did you think of the movie? I think that's my first question.
Well, I mean, honestly, I think I text you after I started to watch it and I paused it because just the intro alone, I'm kind of going, I mean, that could be in any massive theater across the US and you wouldn't know the difference. I mean, Peter Jackson could have done that intro. And I did. I had paused it after the intro and I text you that and I'm going, dude, so far I'm like totally blown away. But I know that to you, and I think I've mentioned this before on air, my favorite still to this day is Minerva Monster. I don't know why, and I know you always kind of cringe a little bit at that, and it was your first, and I understand why you cringe at that, but that still has my heart. However, this one visually was just so different for me from the others, and it was, I don't know what other word to use, but captivating. Just the slow motions, and even just the shot of Linda in her home. I think she was like straightening her clothing after she stood up from the couch or something. Just the lighting in the room and the way the camera angle was, and it was captivating. And you sit and you watch the whole thing and the time flies by. And of course the subject matter is fascinating.
Awesome. Good. I'm glad to hear it. I'm still like waiting, for like a consensus sort of to come in, because the negative stuff's going to start coming soon once like a larger audience starts to see it. And so I'm always like anxiously awaiting, the first people that are like, hey, this sucked and this is why. And they actually have like a valid point. Like you get a lot of criticism on like Amazon reviews or whatever, but
right.
there does come a point where people are making like valid points about the movie. And I've got my own criticisms of it, obviously, because I made it, but like, I am really like, you're right. It is funny. Like everyone, what I'm consistently hearing is like visually, it just stands apart from the other movies. And it's funny. What's weird about that to me is like the interviews for sure stand apart from everything else, because we've never done stylized sort of interview lighting. In fact, we don't really light on any of the other movies anyway. We didn't even light the interviews. This was the first movie where we actually were using lighting like consistently on our interviews. Normally we just set up cameras wherever we could and shot with the available light. So this one was like the first one where we did stylized stuff. But like the rest of the movie, to me anyway, like the closest that came to this visually was the Mothman, like the Mothman of Point Pleasant. And part of it too, I think what people are responding to as well is like just the moody sort of look that was completely out of our control. That was just the weather in Wisconsin was this overcast, like super creepy looking. We shot it in April, but it looks like fall, like late fall or something.
Yeah, that was definitely one of the stars of the film, was the weather and just adding that. You guys in the biz call it like color grading, right? I mean, you're kind of looking for that certain tone, but it kind of seemed to do it on its own in a way.
Well, that's a cool thing too, is like our movies are sponsored by Red Giant, who gave us this very expensive color grading suite called Magic Bullet. And so it's almost like an Instagram filter. like we pick like a color palette and then we just overlay that over the film. And in this situation, Zach and Santino had done such an awesome job with like shooting it that we could just toss that filter over it and then make minor adjustments, and everything kind of came out looking like we had spent months color grading it. But it really was a very quick turnaround time. And honestly, the entire movie was a really quick turnaround time. It's like, we shot in April and locked editing and had sent it off to press by like mid-August. So it was a very very quick turnaround time.
So, I love the post as much as I love the behind the scenes of the filming. So as far as color grading goes, I mean, have there been times when you guys are going either interview to outdoor interview to indoor interview, or maybe a B-roll footage, and you're color grading each one separately, or you're trying to lay the same color grade feature over the entire film?
On this one, I color graded. So the interviews all had really similar lighting, mostly because other than I think one or two of the interviews were shot in another location, but all the interviews were shot in the basement of the house we rented. So it was really easy to control that aspect of it. So that was like a really minor color grade that I had done over all that stuff, and it was more just to bring out the sort of like darken the shadows and like just make everything a little moodier. But our problem is we shoot with so many different types of cameras. So you've got in this film A7S's filming, but our A camera was a Magic Bullet, not Magic Bullet, Black Magic Ursa Mini camera. But then we have tons of drone footage. There's a boatload of drone footage in this, and that's making all that stuff match is really difficult. You have to go into like each shot and tweak it until it at least looks, and I'm terrible about understanding how to do that. So luckily, like Zach and Santino, again, their names come up a lot on this, will be like, okay, if you adjust the greens in this direction, you'll get this shot will match this shot better, like that kind of stuff. And then I have to go in and like literally tweak the green or blue in the shot to match better with the black magic. I'm sure people listening to this are like, I could care less about this, but it really is like, that's the painstaking, like, and at that point in the process, my computer is so bogged because I'm editing on a 2013 iMac. My computer's so bogged down that minor color adjustments will like crash my computer constantly. So I spend a ton of time just trying to even pull off minor color grading stuff because of how bad my computer is. But I mean, that's all part of the glory of indie film.
Yeah, that's right. Doing it at home. Is it true that if you get one of the new iMacs, they're basically made for folks that do things like you do?
Yeah, I mean, and that's like that. I would love to buy that, but aren't they like $15,000? I mean, it's
somewhere
obscene.
Mm-hmm.
I'd have to like sell my soul to the devil.
But you know what? It'd be worth it. I mean, your life would be so much easier, and editing would go so much quicker. I mean, you may not have a soul, but you'd have the new iMac.
You'd have the new iMac.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, I mean, it really is. It does sound like it's made like specifically for like video editing and all that. So if I could get to that point, I would love to upgrade, but I'm also trying to put out 2 movies
More
a year.
films,
Like
yes.
yeah. So like right now I'm moving into shooting Terror in the Skies, and it's funny because like we haven't even put out Bray yet, but like this one, Terror, is going to be self-funded until the next Kickstarter goes off, and then hopefully the Kickstarter will like post-produce or fund the post-production on Terror in the Skies. So this is how it's gotten to the point now where like since the turnaround time on our films is so fast, like by the time we get to the second movie of the year, we have completely exhausted all the Kickstarter money, especially when you're shooting like other side projects like On the Trail of Bigfoot, which I'm also shooting at the same time. So the funds just dry up, and then you can't afford that $30,000 computer. So you have to call someone and be like, hey, I need to sell my soul to the Bray Road Beast. Yeah,
you have to become Faust, right?
Mm-hmm. That's me, Faust.
Yeah. I was just speaking to Tombstone before we hopped on. See, they do the little drama piece in Tombstone. Faust sells his soul to the devil, and you'd be like, I want an iMac. Thank you.
Oh, man. Here I thought you were like getting really deep and like referencing, literature and play. And instead you're just referencing Tombstone.
Yeah, no. No, that's why when naturally. I text you and I'm like, for hopping on the call, I'm like, say when, just like, I mean, that's what Val Kilmer says in Tombstone. Say when. So there you go. No, I'm not that deep.
I haven't seen that. Well, neither am I.
Wait,
I mean,
what were you gonna say?
I haven't seen Tombstone in probably like a decade.
Oh, okay.
It's been a long time.
Oh, okay.
But it's like it's one of those movies that I love, but I don't get around to it on the reg, as the kids say.
Well, it's just one of those that, at least for me, I've seen it so many times that if it's on, I'll just leave it on in the background and, do housework or do whatever I'm doing. But unfortunately, that also means that all of these silly, silly lines are just stuck in my head, and I use them at random. Mm-hmm.
I'm like that with random lines from Grosse Pointe Blank.
Yes.
And then also the movie Angus.
Oh, I don't think I've seen that.
Oh my god, it's about it's a classic. It's like it's about this fat kid. It was me as a kid. I was like very, very chubby, and I am now. But anyway, this is, again, I'm getting us so far off topic. Your listeners are already tuning
That's how
out,
we do it around here.
Watch Angus. It's really
Okay,
a glorious film.
It's glorious. Okay.
Yeah.
I love that. Okay. You know what's not smart? Running into pitch black woods by yourself. But you know what is smart? Going to ZipRecruiter.com/FRAY to hire the right person. ZipRecruiter doesn't depend on candidates finding you. It finds them for you. Its powerful matching technology scans thousands of resumes, identifies people with the right skills, education, and experience for your job, and actively invites them to apply. So you get qualified candidates fast. That's why ZipRecruiter is rated #1 by employers in the U.S. This rating comes from hiring sites on Trustpilot with over 1,000 reviews. And right now, my listeners can try ZipRecruiter for free at this exclusive web address. ZipRecruiter.com/FRAY. That's ZipRecruiter.com/FRAY. ZipRecruiter.com/FRAY. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. Any drone crashes for you guys this time around?
No, there really wasn't. I'm trying to think if we had anything crazy happen with equipment, and we really didn't. I will say this was probably next to Buggy Creek, where we were just like soaked in sweat and miserable the whole time. This is probably the most miserable outdoor weather we've had to film in, but it thankfully wasn't like the entire trip or anything like that. It was just like there were 1 or 2 days where it was freezing cold and like sort of half snowing, half ice, rain stuff mixture falling from the sky on us. But we didn't ruin any equipment or anything. The biggest issue was like we were filming in 2K on the Blackmagic, which is, we don't typically need to film in 4K. The only thing I usually will shoot in 4K is like our drone footage, but we were shooting in 2K, and it does eat up like a ton of memory. So we were at night. And if you watched any of the like behind the scenes production stuff that I posted online while we were kind of like after we came back, I guess, you would know this, but like I would spend probably 4 hours, 2 to 4 hours each night once all the filming was done, just transferring all the footage to an external hard drive, just so we had, just so we had a backup. And we were also, I think we had 2 backups. We had 2 different external hard drives. We were wiping all the memory to. So that was something we'd never had to deal with, but it was just the fact that we were shooting so much footage. I think we ended up with like 1.5 terabytes worth of footage after the end of the movie. Yeah. And it wasn't even like we didn't have an abundance of B-roll. In fact, I think most of the shots you see in the movie are what we shot. We kind of ran out of footage at a certain point. So, there was definitely, there was definitely a ton of footage. The closest we've come to this like quantity would have been Boggy Creek Monster. So that was fun.
See, but the positive about weather like that near snowing is you don't have to deal with mosquitoes.
Yeah, or ticks. And like ticks had really made me nervous. I was concerned about the ticks, and someone had actually warned me to get like permethrin, so I'd gone out and ordered a bunch of that, which actually came in use later in the summer when I went to Oklahoma into Area X. But like I had soaked some of the gear in permethrin and stuff, and then you got there and it's like 40 degrees, 30 degrees in the evening, and I'm like, okay, well that was useless.
Yeah, I don't need that now.
Yeah,
those little beasts are disgusting. They're just worthless little nasty things.
Oh my god, the worst I've had to deal with ticks so far was when we shot a Japanese television show about hunting the Mothman last May in the TNT area. And we would be in there, for like 12 to 14 hours at a shot. And when you would come out, you were just covered in them. Like literally, like they're all over your clothes. And thankfully, like myself or none of the guys on my crew actually ended up, having any get into our skin, but they were just covered, like they were everywhere in there. It's the only time I've had that experience, and it was super creepy. Like you're convinced that any minute you're going to get Lyme disease.
Yeah, and the only time I remember having to deal with a tick that had actually buried itself into something was we were in Salt Fork, and it had attached itself to Gimli, poor little pug Gimli, Mr. Flatface, and
that's the worst.
He was full bore in there, booty filled with all kinds of blood, and you're just going, this is disgusting. This is so disgusting.
Was it one of those like deer ticks where they get super huge?
Yeah, where his booty was gray, real flat and gray.
Disgusting. Yeah, we took our dogs to Whitehall when we premiered The Beast of Whitehall a couple years ago, and all they did was spend a little bit of time out of the car or out of the cabin we were staying at, and when we got home, they were covered in. They removed 6, I think, from Bubby and 4 or 5 from Ramona. But this, I guess, in New York, they were really bad, and that was strange too because it was April and there was snow on the ground, but they were covered in ticks.
There was snow on the ground. The ticks were still out.
Yeah, we actually drove home from that trip in a horrific blizzard, and they still were covered in ticks when we got home.
Man, Bubby don't play that, okay? Bubby don't play that.
No, it was not I would tell you it was not a good trip for Bubby. He also shat all over the the back seat of our car.
Oh, like
on the drive home.
And you had to like deal with that?
No, it was like while we were still in New York. But he had a rough trip. It wasn't a very good one.
That's when you need one of the Honda Elements. Is it true you can just like hose those things out, right?
Well, thankfully, like we had this huge blanket down, and so that was what took the brunt of the poo storm. But
poor Bubby.
Yeah,
those are cool dogs. I always love your posts with like Bubby and Ramona are they're hanging out with Tommy, and everyone's just so chill. You just tell everyone's happy they're home and hanging out.
I said today to Adrian, like somehow we have raised the 2 most neurotic dogs. Like they're both equally neurotic about different things, but they're very. Bubby's the most anxious dog you'll ever meet, and Ramona's just perpetually angry.
Oh, I mean, hey, it works somehow though, right?
Yeah, it all works.
It
all comes together, and they love Tommy, so that's the most important thing.
Absolutely. If they take right to the baby, then you're like, okay, we can deal with your neuroses no matter what.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I take personal responsibility for the neuroses. I think I just passed them on. Yeah.
Yeah, you should.
Yeah.
Totally. All right. So sorry. We're talking about all kinds of stuff. I apologize. Let's get back to the Bray Road Beast. So for anybody somehow that doesn't know the story of the Bray Road Beast, can you kind of give a nice little synopsis of what was going on in that area at the time?
Yeah, in 1989, a girl named Lori Andruzzi was driving down Bray Road just outside of the town of Elkhorn, which is in southern Wisconsin, kind of like right along the border to Illinois, not far from the border to Illinois. In Walworth County. Lori was driving home from work, and she saw a creature sort of hunched down on the side of the road, eating what appeared to be some sort of roadkill. She thinks it was a raccoon. She kind of pulled up alongside it, looked up at her, freaked her out. She drove home and didn't report it, didn't talk about it to anyone, didn't really tell anyone about it. 2 years passed, and a girl named Doris Gibson was driving home. I can't remember. It was Halloween night, and I want to say it was 91, but I might be wrong. Could have been 90. Anyway, Doris was driving home on Halloween night, and she felt like she had hit something in the road while she was driving, and was worried it was some type of dog or something. So she pulled off to the side of the road and got out of the car to check her car. And she saw this large I guess, werewolf-like creature standing on its hind legs in the middle of the road. And it started toward her. She turned and ran, jumped in her car, and it actually chased the car down, and leapt onto the back of the car and left sort of like claw marks down the trunk of the car, as if it was, trying to tear the car apart or something. It all sounds like a movie, which is part of the reason the recreations are shot the way they are in our movie. But sort of the other big incident that happened around that same time was Tom Brickta, who was another local teen who encountered the creature on Bray Road. But those three stories were kind of the ones that were catapulted into the national eye when they were investigated by a local reporter named Linda Godfrey. And Godfrey came to this story as I would refer to her as skeptical, or possibly even, like on the verge of a scofftic, like almost sort of making fun of it initially. Mm-hmm. And she reported very honestly and openly about the story, and began to think that there might have been something, there might actually be something to it. And around that same time, when she first started investigating the story, she was told about a local Walworth County animal control officer who had a file of reports, and she went and spoke to him and came to find out that there were sort of reports from all over Walworth County by locals and non-locals of some sort of, upright walking wolf-like creature that was being seen around Bray Road. And from there, the story just kind of blew up and became this. I don't know. Like it's difficult for me to really. I can't figure out. Like, this is one of those cases where I can't figure out if it really is popular. If this is a popular cryptid, or if it's sort of like an unknown that is popular within the like crypto para realm,
right?
Like the Mothman sort of transcends these subjects, and it's well known outside of the para community. And I would say the same about something like Bigfoot or UFOs. The people have a natural interest in those subjects, and people are aware of the Mothman who have no interest in any other paranormal subject. But when it comes to the Beast of Bray Road, I can't tell if it's the same thing or not. But it did sort of blow up, at least for a short time there in the early 90s, and become a part of the zeitgeist, I think. And so our movie sort of tracks those initial sightings and Linda Godfrey's involvement in them, and uses that as a springboard to take a look at the dogman / werewolf phenomenon as a whole, as well as sort of what is going on around Bray Road today. And then it also goes into some, sort of weird areas that involve like satanic rituals taking place in the woods and stuff like that. So,
which can be ultimately more terrifying than most anything that we talk about, I think.
Yeah, and I really wish I'd known it, but I ran into Chad Lewis and Kevin Nelson at the Mothman Festival last weekend, and we had a discussion about that aspect of the film, and they actually did some of their own research into the occult angle of the Bray Road Beast, and uncovered some really cool, or not cool, but some really intriguing aspects to that I would highly recommend people asking them about next time they see either of those guys, because I don't feel like I'm at liberty to just start talking about their research for them, but they could definitely have filled in some cool holes in our story, actually, or like given us a little bit more info on that. But it does definitely, especially after talking to them, like it really does seem like there's some sort of ongoing satanic cult that is like based in Walworth County.
Okay, and I don't know if I'm allowed to ask this, and you might want to smack me through the Skype connection right now, but I mean, what do you personally think about Dogman itself? Do you think it's even out there? Or if it is, what the heck is it?
I mean, when I came into the story, this was the subject that I had balked at doing for a long time, because the entire idea of like an upright walking species of canine to me just seemed ludicrous.
Yeah.
So and honestly, I think where I stand now is like the idea that there's some sort of undiscovered species of werewolf or dogman, however you want to put it, out there. I don't think I do buy into that. But the angle of the occult and conjuring some sort of spirit or demon, so, like there's something very intriguing about that aspect of the story to me. And then when you get into like what's going on with Lee's farm, like it clearly is not a cut and dried biological creature phenomenon as far as I'm concerned. I just don't see it as being that. And I've talked to people who are like, oh, the dogman's just like a misidentified Bigfoot. I don't think I buy into that either.
That's a stretch. Yeah.
Yeah. So, that might've sounded like I was sneaking around the question.
I mean, you did, but that's okay. That's what we do.
Yeah,
no, it's a good answer though, because, I find myself in the same situation because I've talked to quite a few people who have said they have seen these creatures up close. They can even hear like joints popping and the whole nine. Mm-hmm. But to me, I'm always kind of laughing, and it is kind of a joke now, at least for my side of it, that I'm kind of going, Dogman is always pissed off. He's always just like, the poor woman that had to jump on her car, and, people see it in the middle of the road and it's just like mad dogging them, giving them the stink eye. They don't really mind if you see them. They will walk out, whether it's daylight, full moonlight. They don't seem to really care. So I'm kind of wondering if the occult situation plays into that, to where they're kind of going, thanks for waking me up, a-holes, and now I'm here, and I'm going to make your lives a living hell.
Yeah, I mean, it just doesn't seem to be... The undiscovered species thing doesn't make any sense to me. And if you go to Walworth County and go to Bray Road, that particular location as being some sort of bastion for an undiscovered species of werewolf, I mean, it's not an ideal habitat for something to stay hidden. There's tiny patches of woods, and some, little bit of marshland here and there, but it's mostly wide open fields, farmers, and then two major highways. Like you're not going to go undiscovered there very long.
Right.
So for something to be there for that long, a period of time, and then when you factor in things like the Gadara, the 1936 sighting at St. Coletta's, that seems to have some sort of, supernatural ties as well. It just makes me question the whole undiscovered dogman species hypothesis. I just don't think I don't think right now that I buy into that.
I mean, if we're going off, and it's always been an area of contention with Bigfooters, is how many of the big feetses are out there, right? And some people say there's 3,000. Other people say 10,000. And then others exorbitant numbers. And you're kind of going, well, I don't know. It could be anything, I guess. Who really knows? There's no experts. Again, there are no experts, right?
Right.
But the Dogman seems like a whole nother, like, oh my God, a even bigger question mark with how that would work.
Yeah, and if you are a Bigfoot, if you're like one of the people that are out there saying that like Dogman is just a misidentified Bigfoot, like I think typically the idea is that Bigfoot are some sort of creature that likes to remain, they keep a low profile. They're in sort of like out of the way places, rural locations. And I'm not saying that Elkhorn is some sort of, it's not Chicago. But at the same time, where Bray Road is not what I would call isolated by any stretch of the imagination. It really is. I mean, you can look in any direction and you're going to see a house, like across the field or something. And there just isn't, if the idea is that Bigfoot, like to stay in a spot and raise a family or whatever, this is not the spot where that's going to happen. So why were they being seen over the a period of like a decade? So I definitely don't buy into the undiscovered or the misidentified Bigfoot theory either.
All right, so I posed. Well, I shouldn't say I posed. I put up a post, and I said, if you want to pose any questions to Seth while he's on, come forward. I will ask them, and people definitely delivered. And this will definitely play into some of the questions that, I mean, I would have tried to have gotten as far as some of the sightings and what's going on with the area, and of course some of the behind the scenes. So if you're okay with that, I'd like to fire some of these off at you.
Yeah, these are awesome. I was trying to keep up with them while they were being posted, and some of them were really cool. So
people were excited. So
I'm always excited, Shannon.
I know. No matter
can
the
you
time
tell
of day.
by the just a thrill seeker.
You're just we're just by the seat of our pants right now. We're just on fire. So we might go for 4 hours. People don't know.
Yeah, I never know. When was the last time I was on this show? I can't even
Actually,
Did I have Brandon with me?
I think that it was you and Brandon, and we were like taking screenshots of our Skype.
Okay, because he was
stuff. That was a long time ago.
I was going to say he's been gone since June of last year. I mean, thankfully, like what's weird about Brandon being gone to LA is I think we've actually probably seen each other as much as we normally would this year because of the way. Yeah, because of the fact that like he came back here for a couple of visits, but then also like he flew back for Mothman Festival. He flew out for the filming for Bray Road Beast, and then he actually drove down and hung out with me in San Francisco last March, and then when I flew out to LA for all the production meetings for the show, he lives like right down the street from Adam. So like he actually, yeah, it's crazy. Like we went out to dinner like that night, and the second night I was in LA or something, I went to this incredible, like great restaurant, the best restaurant I've ever been to in my life, called the Mess Hall. If you're in LA, listeners, and you haven't been to it yet, I highly recommend the Mess Hall. It was heaven on earth. But yeah, he hung out with us there and stuff too. So I think this year we've probably seen each other almost as much as if he was still living here.
I like hearing that. No, I really like LA, and I hate LA at the same time because I just hate it. I took my own vehicle out there, and I was driving around. This was a few months back, and I was out there it was a very quick trip. It was like 2 days, and went to a vegan restaurant, and I look over, and I just had this moment of, I don't know if I can contain myself, because Rob Zombie and Sherry Moon Zombie are sitting just feet from me, and I'm like, I mean, do I do the nerdy, like, I love you guys, can you sign something? I don't care what. And people, put your gross thoughts away, okay? I'm just saying.
Yeah,
it's
the
Rob's
second you said that, I was like, oh, rethink.
Like, oh, your warning is so bad. Just become one of the roadies all of a sudden. No, I look over it. It was kind of one of those things you're like, oh, that guy looks like Rob Zombie. He's got some really bad to the bone dreadlocks. Oh, because it is Rob Zombie. Okay, there you go. It's LA, so you never know who you're going to run into.
I hadn't been there since I think the last time I spent time. I flew into LA in 2007, but I hadn't spent time. I used to be there all the time, but I hadn't spent any kind of time there since 2003, and it is drastically changed. Like
Why were you there all the time before, if you don't mind my asking?
I used to date a girl that lived in LA.
Oh, gotcha.
So,
okay.
So like it was like a long distance thing for like 2.5 years. So I was there constantly.
Ugh, LA.
But the best thing about it, though, the one thing I will say that I love is, well, there's two things. I love the comic book stores because they're fantastic, and although Meltdown closed, which is really heartbreaking. But the other thing is the food. I mean, you can't go wrong. The food is phenomenal wherever you go.
Hey, have you guys been down to, this is in, it's not, I think it is actually, the address would be Cleveland. It's called Melt, Have you been
it's
there?
all over now.
Oh, it is?
Because you were here you moved away in what, 2015?
3 years ago, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they franchised it like crazy. It's all over this part of the country
like
now.
that
It's
deep
like
fried macaroni, whatever the heck that was. Oh my
so.
God.
So I have yet to actually eat there because every time I try to go to one, the lines are. Adrian went on a Wednesday afternoon at like 2 p.m. and the line was still like 45 minutes long just
It's
to get
worth
in.
it.
So
It's worth it.
I haven't. Yeah, but I'm an old man and like lines.
I don't want to
bug
hear
me.
this, buddy. I know, I know about the antisocial and it's all people-y, but it's very worth it because they have these appetizers called mac and cheese bites or something, and
Oh, yeah.
it is ridiculous. And then the main entree sandwiches are ridiculous. Very worth it. Mm-hmm.
There's
Just
one
go early.
There's one 10 minutes away from us.
Oh God! You know what? Then you guys do
right in Fairlawn.
not have an excuse.
No,
Here's a tip, though. What's that?
I gotta go. At some point, I gotta go.
But just go early, so that your stomach acid has time to work, because you don't want to like eat at 7 o'clock at night and then go to bed because you'll have probably the worst indigestion of your life. I'm just gonna say that.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Thank you.
I mean, great food, but I'm just saying.
Yeah.
It's very rich.
I go to bed most nights with like the worst indigestion I've ever.
We're getting older, aren't we?
Yeah, it's happening.
It's creeping up on us, bastards. Yeah. Oh, all right. Getting some. All right, everybody, go to Melt. We were not paid to endorse that chain, by the way. I was just gonna say that.
No, I've never even been there.
Yeah, there you go. See, Seth over here is really behind the times. We're getting paid, and he's not even going.
I'm gonna catch up eventually.
Don't worry, I'll edit that so you still get your check. Okay. All right, so Mitch wants to know, are there any recent sightings of the beast?
So there was. Linda has a blog she keeps, and she keeps up with all that stuff and posts everything publicly. And there was a more recent report, but what actually really grabbed my attention was a report she sent me that was reported to her recently, but that had occurred prior to Lori Andrezi's sighting. And that really fascinated me because, like, for some reason, I want to say it was like 1981. So we're talking like way prior to the Andrezi sighting. And that actually is the stuff that tends to, grab my attention a little bit more than the really recent stuff. The problem with like the more recent sightings to me is that it has kind of become almost like a pop culture character in that part of the country.
Right.
So you got, like it kind of contaminates the pool of witnesses to some degree. Like you're going to question almost everything that's being told to you because a lot of people want to play a part in the story. But that 80s sighting really grabbed my attention because I thought that was so cool that someone had come forward with that sighting, and they were a really believable witness. Linda felt that they were being like 100% honest with her. They had nothing to gain by telling her about it, and they just kind of relayed their pre pop culture explosion encounter with the Beast of Bray Road. So there are still sightings taking place, but it's like 3 or 4 a year. It's nothing. There's not a substantial number like there was back in the day. One thing about our movie is that, like, it would be very easy for us to make a sequel to this one. There's only 2 movies that we can make a sequel, there's probably 3 actually, but the 2 that are most immediately ready, for a sequel would be like the Mothman movie, which we're doing in 2020, the Mothman Legacy. And then also the Beast of Bray Road, because we barely scratched the surface of sightings that were reported in the film. And then also we lost, we didn't lose, but we were unable to get interviews with a couple of the original witnesses. So if we ever can revisit this story, there's a very cool sequel to the Bray Road Beast that could be made. But yes, the quick answer is there's still sightings going on, and one was fairly recent.
Let's take another quick break, our last break for the show. These days, you can get practically everything on demand. Much like my podcast, listen whenever you want, when it's convenient for you. But did you know you can even get postage on demand? All you need is Stamps.com. With Stamps.com, you can access all the services of the post office right from your desk. Buy and print real U.S. postage for any letter or any package. Just click, print, mail, and you're done. Stamps.com will even send you a digital scale. You can weigh your letters and packages and print the exact amount of postage every time. I myself have Stamps.com in my home office and have been using it for everything Into the Fray needs. Right now, use FRAY for this special offer. It's a 4-week trial, which includes postage and a digital scale. So don't wait. Go to Stamps.com before you do anything else. Click on the radio microphone at the top of the homepage and type in FRAY. That's Stamps.com. Enter FRAY. All right. So Chris asks, are there any official reports from officers, state workers, etc.?
So obviously the John Frederickson kept a file of that, which I think that itself is very interesting. Like an official county worker actually had their own file of sighting reports. But there was sort of a famous sighting, or a sighting that's become very famous, with like and I hate to tell this story because it's not in our film, and if I tell it wrong, people probably already know it and they're going to call me on it. But there was like someone who was cleaning roadkill off the road, and supposedly the Beast of Bray Road like stole the roadkill out of the back of their truck. And I want to say this, like, I'm pretty sure that was like a Walworth County worker who was out like collecting this roadkill when it was stolen out of the back of his truck. There have been sightings by police officers that I'm aware of, but one thing to keep in mind with the local police is that they're all Satanists. That's a joke, by the way. I'm not.
Oh, I was going to say you must have had a run-in then, and you don't like the local POs.
No, we had the local PO seemed to be fine. I didn't actually. The biggest thing that has me concerned about this movie is the fact that John Frederickson has such a dicey relationship with the local police, and like he essentially calls the entire community Satanists in our movie. And I'm like, how many people are going to think that's like us, the filmmakers, like, right, like doing that. So I'm heading it off at the pass by calling them that myself. Yeah. But I don't believe they are.
It's cool you brought up the deer being stolen, because Teddy had asked in the thread if that was another story, or if that was in fact the Beast of Bray Road that had stolen some a carcass of a deer out of the back of a truck. So there you go. It did happen.
Yeah, I do believe that was the Beast of Bray Road, and that is Linda's. I know Linda was sort of the one that found that story and put it into the public eye. So she kind of should take the credit for finding that witness. And it was a witness where I knew that story and I knew it was out there. So I didn't want to, like one thing is like we don't want to just regurgitate information or sighting stories that people have already heard 100 times.
Right.
In our film. So, like when there are some stories that are vital, like you have to have them, like the Scarberries and the Mallets with the Mothman, or Laurie Andreezy and Doris Gibson with the Beast of Bray Road. But there are also stories that aren't as vital, that are just great sighting stories, and they might not play into all history, but everyone's aware of them. And that was one where I'd seen it on like 2 or 3 other documentaries, and I was just like, this is probably one we don't need to have, in our film. So that's why it's not in there. But I think when you get into like Ricky's sightings and all that kind of stuff, and Lee's sightings towards the back half of the movie, that a lot of that is information no one's ever going to have heard before, or, sightings that people are going to be unaware of. So I'm kind of excited to see how people respond to those scenes, especially Lee's scene, because Lee's the farm. That's probably my favorite sequence in the film.
All right, and I know that you got excited about this question because I saw that you did. Andrew wanted to know, did you get all of the interviews you wanted for the movie?
No. Like, the fact is, like, we had never had this experience before, and it was a whole new series of obstacles for us. We did not get any of the sort of major witnesses that you think of when you think of the Beast of Bray Road. You know, you think of Laurie Andreezy and Doris Gibson, and we did not get either of them. I was in contact with Laurie, and after the film had come out, she contacted me again and was willing to do an interview.
Oh.
But it was to the point where the movie was pretty well locked, and it just didn't happen. And we had other witnesses cancel the day of their interview.
Why is that? Are you at liberty to say, or I mean,
it was a strange. No, I mean, like, not that I'm not at liberty, but I don't have, like, the one witness, like, I don't feel like it. And the other one just never responded despite being scheduled. And to be frank with you, we were freaked out. John Frederickson wasn't going to show up because his interview. So John Frederickson's interview is kind of, to me, next to Linda, he was the most important interview in the film, but he was also, even more so than Linda, sort of the one that dictated the tone and mood of the entire movie. Because originally the movie had much more of like not a campy tone, but sort of a not kitschy. I don't even know how to put it. It was very much like a Hammer horror nod, and it was going to have this kind of like, this is the 60s, you know, like hammer horror. Similar to, I guess, like kind of what we had done with like the Flatwoods Monster and like embracing that sort of 1940s and 50s aesthetic. This was going to embrace that like 1960s campy horror aesthetic. Instead, like, we interviewed John, and he's getting into like animal mutilations and potential, you know, like satanic cults, and it totally changed the style of the movie and the mood of the movie. And John was scheduled for Saturday morning at like 9 a.m. And we left Elkhorn. We were scheduled to leave Elkhorn that day around 1:30 in the afternoon. So that's how tight it was in terms of like when we were interviewing him and when it was over, like when the shoot was over.
Yeah.
And he showed up about 40 minutes late. And we had set up, like, the interview was set up. We had all our lighting set up. We had everything set up, and we're all just standing in the room, like the living room of this house, waiting for him to show up. And I was convinced that if he didn't show up, we were going to be in a situation where we didn't have anywhere near enough interviews.
Wow.
And we didn't have sort of enough people to sort of fill out the story. So then I was like, well, are we going to have to make a second trip back? And it was, you know, which is scary when you're operating on the budgets that we are. So that was, John. And thankfully he showed up, and it kind of blew us all away. And it was one of the creepiest interviews we have ever shot. There was actually a point in the interview where he was talking about Satan or the devil, and he said the word devil or Satan, one of those words. And at that moment, this like black bird, a raven, flew into the window.
What?
And this bird just like face planted into the window right behind him. And it was on camera, and it like left this one lone feather sort of dangling from this window.
Did you keep the feather?
So that was like, no, we didn't. It was just sort of hanging there from the, you know, with a little bit of brain mucus or something.
You should have collected all of that. It's important.
That's probably true. It probably disappeared after.
That's true.
Probably
considering he said the word devil or Satan, and then the bird hit the window. Messenger gone.
Yeah. So there's again, like, the short answer is that yes, there were a ton of people I would have loved to have interviewed who we didn't get to, and it was also a lesson. Like, it was one of those filmmaking lessons that you get where, you know, like you have to be able to adjust, especially as the guy that's leading the crew and everyone's sort of relying on you to have a plan. Like, when people are dropping out, like they were in the middle of the shoot, you kind of have to figure out how you're going to tell this story with, what you have available.
Yeah, I'm sure at some points you're just like, just give me the adult diaper because I'm just going to lose it. I'm going to lose it. It's got to be really stressful.
It is like, I think I've gotten better about that. Like, I took Jason after the fact and I was like, did I seem like grumpy the whole shoot? And he was like, no. He's like, I think you're to the point where, he said, you just seem to be in like this extreme state of concentration. Mm-hmm. And on this one, I think that was the case because I was just trying to figure out how we were going to tell this story with what we had sort of available. And, like part of that is I'm in that sort of mindset because like as we're shooting, I as soon as I get home, I have to start editing. So I'm already sort of editing in my head, even as we're shooting it. So that's part of that. I'm not a blast. Like anyone who's been on these shoots would probably tell you this. I'm not a blast to be with. And it's mostly just because I'm real quiet and like
have a lot going on.
Yeah. It's like I'm in
You're
this
Papa
other
Bear.
Yeah, that's it. I'm Papa Bear. And that's why I bring, that's why people like Mark and Andy Matsky are so important because like they're sort of the fun loving, happy go lucky guys. And, Zach's in that same ballpark. Like he's usually pretty laid back and chill and Jason's like that. And then I sort of am there, quietly figuring out how it's all going to work.
Oh no, like outside you're just your concentration, but inside you're like, right?
I'm just weeping. That's crying. There's just like, a lot of weeping.
As long as you keep that inside, sir.
Yeah.
Always inside, okay? Never let that out.
Yeah, yeah. I have a funny story about that actually. After
about
when
weeping?
it's true. My wife would bristle if she knew I was telling you this, but like when we shot Invasion on Chestnut Ridge, I had it in my head how the whole film was going to fit together, but it was very hard for me to verbalize it to the crew. And like I had told, I kind of told them how it was all going to work and what was going to happen and how everything was going to kind of fit, but I just wasn't 100% on how each piece would flow into the next. I was having these conversations with the guys during the shoot and they'd be like, okay, can you just explain to me how this works, how this interview with this Thunderbird witness works with the guy that just told us about like the Kecksburg crash.
Right.
Because we interviewed those two guys on the same day. And I was like, I said, it's all going to make sense, man. And it's like, we're going location to location. And it's about all the extremely like weird stuff that's happened. But in all honesty, like I had no idea if that was going to fit, like if everything was going to fit together or not. And all through production, my wife would back me up on this. Actually, any of the guys on the crew would back me up on this. Like I just was constantly in this state of like uncertainty that what we were doing was going to work. And the movie was finished and I sent a cut of it with no music to Gene St. Jean. And Gene will... I adore Gene for his brutal honesty. Like he'll tell me like if something I'm doing stupid, like he's kind of, like he'll tell you it's stupid or whatever. Right. So he tends to be one of the first people I send cuts to for feedback. And I sent him a cut with no music. And I was like, if he likes this with no music, then we're golden, because Brandon sort of ups the game on everything with his music. Like it takes what we're doing from like a 7 or an 8 to 11. He turns it up to 11, just like Spinal Tap. So I sent it to Gene, and I was on a walk with my wife, and I think baby Tommy was in his carriage or whatever. We're walking around Wadsworth, and Gene sent me this, like, I'm not kidding, it was like 10 paragraphs about how much he loved the movie.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, detailed, like, so I could tell, like, this wasn't him just saying, hey man, it's really good or whatever, it's like very detailed, thought out why he liked the movie. And I literally burst into tears while walking, and my wife was so horrified by this fact, like the fact that I
She's
crying.
so
She's
disappointed in you.
Yeah, she's like, do we need to go back to the house? Like, this is really.
She's like,
really...
you're embarrassing me, Seth.
Yeah, it was
Lock
that kind
it up.
of thing.
Lock
like,
it up,
get yourself under control.
Does Gene
that
know
was
that he has that impact on you, or he's going to find out
I
now?
He might find out now. I think I've told this story before, but I don't know. Mentioned that like Gene was the one that had sent the review.
I will make sure that Gene is tagged in this episode.
Yeah, please do. Gene St. Jean, fantastic sculptor.
Oh, creature replica. Yeah,
creature replica. Yeah. So if that's any indication of how sort of involved emotionally I get in the making of the movies, I
appreciate you telling that, because it shows that you're vulnerable, and that, you know, like you said, Gene would have told you, dude, this sucks. You need to just scrap it and do it again. But he didn't say that, and that's why you reacted the way you did. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, that was my first indication that what we had done worked.
Yeah,
and then. You know, and then from there, like, I think that, and that to this day is probably my favorite movie we've made. It goes back and forth between that and Mothman. But I really love Invasion, and I loved like the experience of making that movie. And I learned a lot on that movie. I think I've learned, like, it's weird because I think I've learned the most in terms of storytelling and editing actually on Bray Road. Like I completely changed the way I cut movies on Bray Road. Yeah, just like shot length and learning how to do quick cuts and messing around with sound effects, and even the way we shot the recreations and all that was sort of different from everything that had come before. And then it was like much more. I think this movie and Flatwoods especially are like where you really see the collaborative part of Small Town Monsters, where like if you remove one piece of the team, it could negatively impact the entire production. You know, like if you remove like Brian Irway's amazing black and white images of the Beast, I think that would be a huge loss to the movie, especially like sort of cementing that creature in people's minds throughout and keeping it sort of at the forefront of their mind. Or you take out the music. Obviously, Brandon's always like a huge part of that. Or like, you know, like Zach's cinematography, or Santino and his lighting sequences, or the fact that Santino created that open movie that you were talking about with the Book of Bray, as I call it.
Yeah.
That was all created by Santino and shot in his basement.
Wow.
On this little miniature set he had crafted. So like it's really a collaborative team effort, and then it's just like it's up to me to make sure everything sort of gels and fits together and comes together in a way that works. But I did really change up like my typical editing style on this movie.
Yeah, you're Papa Bear. You're allowed to cry, curse, scream, stomp your feet, whatever you need to do. That's what needs to happen. It works.
Yeah, I guess.
I can just see Adge's face, you know? She's like, what's happening right now?
That's exactly what it was. That was exactly her face.
All right, Arno wants to know, is there any footage of the Beast?
Not believable footage.
Yeah.
You know, like there's shots from Lee's farm that Lee seems convinced are like still photos of the Beast, but I didn't really see anything that made me necessarily think that was true. I do think Lee has like bizarre photos, like things that are sort of unexplainable, that he has photographs of on his farm, but they aren't photos of like an upright walking canid. There's the footage of the or not footage, but there's all the still photographs of the fog rolling in over the dead deer, and then the fog going away and the deer being gone. You know, and there's 3,000 plus photos of that. Those are really fascinating. And then there's a photo he showed me that isn't in our film. Well, it is, but you can't really tell what it is in the film. But there's a photo he showed me of a UFO that I think is probably the most believable UFO photo I've ever seen.
Really?
Yeah, of like some sort of glowing object about 15 feet off the field, off the ground of the field at about, like sometime late at night. And there's a sort of a glowing ball of light. And in the middle of the ball of light is what looks like a window. And there's some sort of form standing in this window. And very unnerving, very weird, and in the heart of Bray Road Beast territory.
Is it a public photo?
No.
Oh, damn it. Why are they never public?
Yeah, I mean, I could talk to Lee about that one. It was one where it didn't play into our film, so it was one where I saw it and I loved it and I thought it was fascinating, but it wasn't something we were going to show in the movie either.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was going to take us down another rabbit trail, and I mean, we could have made an entire movie about Lee's farm and Lee and all that. So it's a super fascinating UFO photo.
I'm quite jealous that you saw that, but that's okay. I'll cry about that later. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so Heather actually has a couple of good questions, but I'm going to insert this first one here. So this is from Heather. Was there an incident where the crew saw something that was moving quickly and was difficult to identify?
Yeah, and if you want to watch some of that unfold, there's a Facebook Live video that we did while we were filming. And I think there's some of the fallout, like where we're talking about it, or it might have someone might have actually been living while it was happening. I can't remember, but we were one of the nights while we were there shooting, we were on our way back to the rental house in Delavan, kind of late at night. We're driving down Bray Road. It's late. I was in a minivan, and then there was a second car behind us that had the Matskis, and I think like Brandon or one of the other crews, Santino might have been in there with them. Anyway, we turned down the road. There was another car in front of us, and we were following that car at a pretty safe distance, like 8 car lengths or something. And all of a sudden, they just slammed on their brakes in the middle of the road, and we saw something in front of their car, but it moved like so crazy fast. We couldn't see what it was, and I was looking to see if it was a deer, but it was gone so fast you couldn't make out what it was. And I thought it was gray. Everyone else that could see it, which I think was only Zach and Brandon, said they thought it was brownish. We have the footage. I think some of this footage is in the making of on the DVD. We have footage of us like going back because we drove down the road a little ways, turned around, and came back to the spot to see if we could find it. And we have footage from that. But basically what ended up happening is the next day we wanted to go back to the spot and see if we could find any tracks or anything. We went back to the spot, and in the cornfield, or not cornfield, but in the empty field next to where we had seen this, there were a lot of like deer tracks. So we're pretty convinced it was just a deer that had run across the road. It was just so strange that it had moved as quickly as it did, and we never saw it on the other side of the car after it had left the road. Or
the deer had crossed before you guys got there to see them, and then you saw the werewolf actually chasing the deer into the field.
Mm-hmm. And that's my personal belief is that we saw a deer cross the road, but the deer was chasing a fox. Chasing the deer was a Bigfoot, and chasing the Bigfoot was a dogman
because of territorial beef.
Chasing the dogman was a Mothman. So we are pretty sure
the trifecta.
We've uncovered the sort of nexus of the paranormal world.
And Seth, it's time for you to cry again because you didn't get it on film. Okay?
I know. I probably will.
Really, just let everybody down with that one, huh?
Yeah. So that was but like the cool thing was at least we had something. Typically we go to these locations and people ask us this stuff and nothing happens. So at least that time we were like, well, we saw something run across the road that was, we're like 90% sure it was a deer.
It's okay. I feel you on that because I've said on my last show, I told Dave this too. on Midnight in the Desert, I was like, I am the equivalent of paranormal bear spray. Like, if I go somewhere that's like the most haunted place ever, Shannon goes, it's like crickets. I'm like, oh, I'm sleeping like a baby. Nothing.
Yeah,
okay.
I mean, like, that's how everything's always been for us. We finally had some weird stuff happen in Point Pleasant last week, but it was nothing too crazy. I can tell that story another time.
Okay. Okay. I don't know. I was like, well, I don't know. I can't. I'm trying to read cues. I'm like, maybe he's going to say it, or I'm going to wait.
I'm not at liberty. I'm not at liberty to say.
Officially not at liberty to say. It is top secret. Okay. Kevin wants to know, did the crew sample the local beer, which is named after the beast?
No, and it's not local. It's in a town like 25, 30 minutes away. So we were going to go to the brewery where they have that because we wanted to shoot, at least get a shot of the bottle or whatever. Because it's, I think it's called the Beast of Bray Road, but I could be wrong. But like the crazy thing about that area is no one there is embracing the legend. So for there to be anything nearby, I would have loved to have at least got a shot of it to show that, well, in some way this is sort of seeped in culture, but there's nothing in Elkhorn itself that would lead you to believe this is a place that is known for a werewolf. We went in a local gift store thinking we might be able to find Linda's books, and there's nothing. Like, you can't.
Are you
there's
kidding?
No, Linda's
not
books
even
aren't.
In Elkhorn?
No, there's nothing.
Do they realize the revenue they're losing out on? I mean, honestly, the tourist dollars that would roll through there would be insane.
Well, there's a line that one of the Bray family says in the movie when we asked him about it, and it's toward the end of the movie. He says, I think it's Bob Bray. It might be Larry Bray. He says, I don't think there's any commercial value to it. And for some reason, they just don't seem to see the fact that, like, that's what they're known for. Like, I don't know how to break it to you, but you're known for that
huge bowl of denial right there. Sorry.
Yeah, it's very strange.
Because guess what? The rest of us, that's what we associate Elkhorn with, period. Yeah,
and they don't get it. So for some reason, there's nothing, they don't really want anything to do with it. Yeah. And I guess that's their prerogative.
Okay, well, there you go. Maybe they'll change their minds, but probably not.
Probably not.
Mary wants to know, did you film where it was spotted? And if so, was it creepy?
Bray Road itself is not creepy. I grew up in farm country in Ohio. Like a lot of dairy farms, a lot of cornfields and stuff like that, back roads. And some of those back roads, those back farming roads are super creepy. So I don't know if it's just the fact that I grew up in that kind of area and this paled in comparison to where I grew up. But to me, there was really nothing scary about Bray Road. And, I could see someone who's spent their whole life in the city, maybe coming out there at night and being like fully aware of the legend and being like, this is real creepy after dark. But I couldn't, during the day, you're never going to drive down that road and be like, this is really creepy. It just isn't. It's just a road. And you're always aware of that highway on your left or right, depending on which way you're coming, and the major road on the other side. And the fact that there's houses everywhere and, like a few fields and very small patches of woods. There's just, to me, it's not creepy. But we did film at sort of all the locations that are sort of major areas of sightings. We filmed directly. In fact, what's really interesting about where we saw where we had that incident that happened to us, which was more than likely just a deer running across the road, that was just past Hospital Road, and Doris Gibson's sighting happened just past Hospital Road.
Okay.
So it was at where we had our thing happen would have been about the exact same place where she had her incident happen. So that was kind of cool. But we did film sort of all the major locations, and then we shot think the thing I'm most proud of is that we did manage to find St. Coletta's and film at that location. And it's not a place that is, on film much. And there's a lot of really interesting history with that place. Like that's where JFK's sister was actually a patient there. So like there's a lot of really interesting sort of non-paranormal history to that place. But then there is some really creepy paranormal history, such as, there was supposedly an exorcism there that was performed there 2 weeks prior to the Gadara creature sighting in 1936.
That's a very interesting tie-in.
Yeah.
Or a possible tie-in, I should say. Sorry, guys.
Yeah. And there's just, we went to as many of the locations as we could possibly find or know where they were and filmed. And we were out on Bray Road at all hours of the day and night in the time we were there. And we were out in that general area all hours of the day and night. So nothing other than that incident where the deer ran across the road ever really happened to us.
The quote-unquote deer. Seth, I'm really tired of your skeptical, rational mind just always poo-pooing everything away. And it's okay. I know you don't want to admit you guys saw Dogman. It's cool, or a Wolfman, as I've been told I say.
A Wolfman.
A Wolfman.
Yeah, Wolfman.
But hey, a Wolfman. Ooh, I like that. Wolfman. It's very
Wolfman.
Viking-ish. Wolfman.
That's it almost sounds like an name from like the early 1900s. So it'd be like Jonathan Wolfman.
Drink out of a cranium somewhere.
George Wolfman.
It's George. Well, now you said George. My thing doesn't sound nearly as cool. I'm like drinking out of a cranium. No, it's George Wolfman. Okay.
It's just George. Yeah, he's a dock worker.
Oh, it's George. Oh,
he's a dock worker in like the Bronx.
He drinks
George
the ale.
Wolfman. Yeah. He becomes like a union.
It really does.
Union worker, sort of like a union leader in the early 1900s.
I don't know. Don't push it. Don't push George to be one of a Hoffa type of a situation. Okay.
Yeah, that's true. George,
don't get him buried somewhere. No one will ever find him. George Wolfman.
George Wolfman.
It just rolls off the tongue. God.
It does. Right. Yeah.
It really does. All right. Here's the second part of Heather's question, and I like this one. Have you guys just, as a collective, come across cryptids previously unknown to you since starting Small Town Monsters?
I saw this one, and I was trying to think of any, and I think the one that springs to mind, and I'm sure there's others. I'm sure there's quite a few others, honestly, but the one that springs to mind is the Grafton monster in West Virginia, which is like this strange sort of headless creature that wandered around Grafton, West Virginia. It's a fascinating story, and I love West Virginia, and I love West Virginia's cryptids, especially because they seem to have the coolest monster stories. And the Grafton monsters is one of those. However, I don't know much about it. So it's like one of those ones where I'm aware of it. I just haven't had the time.
Is this a humanoid figure? I mean,
it's sort of a humanoid figure, but headless. It's
is he carrying a lantern and a side? Maybe.
No, that'd be cooler.
Yeah.
No, why can't I'm desperately hoping that someday people inform me that there's actual things of like the Headless Horseman from Sleepy Hollow, because like
I would love
that would be my dream movie right there.
That's a flaming pumpkin coming at you. I'd be like, yes.
Yeah.
And you're just gone.
Bring it, kill me now.
Yeah. Just to have that confirmation before you die it'd be worth it.
You're just George
like an
Wolfman.
Alien. Yeah, George. It's a new hashtag. George Wolfman.
Yeah.
It's George Wolfman.
Hashtag Wolfman.
Wolfman.
Wolfman for Prez.
I need the sketch of Mr. Wolfman now. I need it.
So yeah, the Grafton monster I think was one I wasn't aware. The other one that's mine, I can't think of the name right now, but there was this giant snapping turtle that supposedly resides in Indiana. What is it? It's like Cherubusco. Someone's going to have to correct me on this, but there's a giant snapping turtle. What'd you say?
Oh, that's a cool name, Cherubusca.
Oh, I thought you said cerebellum. I was going to say no. That's
a
totally different
body part. Yeah, no.
Yeah, that's different.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there's there's like a ton. There's a ton of these stories that you're aware of, and people like. I mean, going into this, we sort of knew coming into it that like the entire idea behind Small Town Monsters is rooted in the idea that every town has multiple local monster legends or local legends, and so it's like naturally we've had people sending us reports of like their local monster since we made Minerva, right. And that's kind of my favorite aspect of all of this. But a lot of them I was aware of, but you do get the ones that you've never heard of before, and some of them are really, really cool, and they make you wish you could make a movie about them, and then others are so silly you just sort of fall in love with that aspect of them as well.
Yeah, just like a wandering cerebellum would be kind of odd, right? I mean,
yeah, that actually would be pretty terrifying. Honestly.
Yeah, I don't think after that one. Mm-mm.
No.
All right, now Jamie had a question. I think it's one of the most important ones, and that is
one thing. Not to cut you off, but the Wandering Cerebellum was actually a great movie from the 1940s.
Really?
No.
Okay, I mean, I'm not always up on what the kids are watching, so
in the 1940s.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no.
Everyone's
I could just see that. Like, I could kind of see, like, the Wandering Cerebellum being some sort of B movie.
The black and white, just, yeah, barely the music. You can hear the music kind of sort of in the background. You're like, it's so grainy, the footage and the music. I don't know what's going on. It's so gooey.
That would actually probably be the tagline for the movie. It's so gooey.
It's so damn gooey. No, yeah, when I say like what the kids are watching, because everybody always brings up these great old movies, and I'm always like, they're like, "Oh, you've seen that, right?" And I'm like, "No," and my head's hanging down. I'm like, "No." Oh, you've seen this too, right? I'm like, "No."
I'm a film nerd, and like I was before it was cool not to be that guy. But I mean, I was like in the mid '90s and late '90s, like that was when I was watching a little bit of everything. And so I think a lot of that stuff has seeped into our films now, and it's not most of the time it's not consciously, like it isn't always going to be like Flatwoods where like I'm very purposely like sort of intertwining my love of B sci-fi movies from the 50s into like the actual movie, but I think a lot of the stuff I watched as a kid is made its way into our stuff, but that there is no movie called The Wandering Cerebellum. I
mean, there should be.
Yet.
I mean, I thought you had me there because I was like, well, I mean, hell, they have got some really strange titles from back in the day, so I don't know. What I remember from the 90s is stuff like Tales from the Crypt, or the Cat's Eye, where the troll comes out and he's got this damn dangly hat with the bells on it, and he's there like stealing breath from kids and stuff, and you're going, this is just, or Santa comes down the chimney with the axe, or
Mr. Boogedy, like
I was gonna say yes, Mr. Boogedy Boo. I mean, is that where the NASCAR guy got that? Because it drives me nuts because everyone's like, oh, you just came up with that. I'm like, no, that is from Mr. Boogedy. Go watch the movie. Get your stuff straight.
Yeah, like Mr. Boogedy was this. So for listeners who are now like, what in the heck has the show become? Mr. Boogedy was a Disney Channel, or it wouldn't have even been Disney Channel. This would have been like pre-Disney Channel.
Yeah.
This would have been like an ABC Disney. What did they call that? World of Disney.
World of Disney. Yep. Exactly.
Yeah. It would have been one of those original movies, and Mr. Boogedy was about this sort of horrifying monstrosity of a creature that terrified a family in a house. And I remember staying at a friend's house, and their mother was insistent that this was a family-friendly, just a fun-loving movie.
Damn.
And I didn't sleep for like 5 days after watching Mr. Boogedy. So yeah, it stuck with me.
That's an incredible movie. I remember the scene where it's kind of the Shining scene where it's down the hallway and then everything around the door is glowing green. You know what I mean? And
everything's green in that movie.
It's just like in The Thing. I think the what he was going for in The Thing was, and I think I remember Sam Shearon telling me this, that he wanted you to watch the scene where his head, and this is from The Thing, where his head departs from his body, where he's becoming this creature, and he made all of the connective tissue in the blood green so that you wouldn't turn away, so you would watch it, and everything was green in that film. So I find that interesting because green is something that's across many of these kinds of films.
It's also a primary color in the fantastic Alfonso Cuarón version of Great Expectations that has Ethan Hawke and Gwyneth Paltrow. And now we've really gone off the rails because...
You know what? I've never thought about that, but I love that movie. It is.
Oh, I'm
You're
obsessed
right.
with that movie.
It's a great film.
Full, it's full of the color green. It's in every scene. But yeah, there's tons of green in that movie.
Even in her house, which was overrun with vines.
With green. And then she is, I honestly don't think she's ever in anything that isn't green. Like her, there's that amazing scene where they meet on the bridge and then they go for the walk.
Yes.
And it's later bookended by the scene where they kind of agree not to talk to each other anymore, but it's it's like shot under the bridge.
Right.
Oh my God. I love that movie. And like every time I watch that movie, I pick up all the stuff about it that is like these lovely little storytelling Easter eggs that Cuarón does, that everyone considers that like an embarrassingly trashy B movie from someone who is now considered like one of the greatest living directors.
Disagree.
And I adore that movie.
I love that movie too. And I never thought about the whole green aspect. That is so interesting.
It's good. It's a great movie.
I don't care when we go off the rails. I like off the rails.
The best scene in that movie is, and I think it's one of the best scenes in any movie, but it's when he goes to, and I didn't realize this until recently, he goes to a party that she's at, like a lavish like banquet or something. There's all these senators and stuff. It's all done in like one take. He walks in, she's there with her fiance. They talk for a second and she's like, I gotta leave. They leave. And then he proceeds to like follow them out, and it's all done in one take. He like follows them out of the building and it's pouring down rain. And he like runs through the streets of New York City in this rain shower and then goes into the restaurant where she's sitting with her fiance
yes,
dance with her in front of the fiance, and then takes her outside and they have this like amazing kiss in the rain, and it's all like one take, but it's one of the best scenes in any movie. I think it's like I love scenes where people run down the street though after someone else. I don't know, I'm a sucker for that kind of stuff. Like there's the scene in Almost Famous where the kid like runs through the streets of New York City while Elton John's Mona Lisa's and Mad Hatter's plays. Also like one of my favorite scenes. And he's for Penny Lane in all the different taxi cabs. He keeps running up to all the taxi cabs. I don't know if I'm totally geeking out about.
No, I love talking film, and I actually haven't watched that film in a while. But you know, the tie-ins with De Niro and when he finally figures out like who's who and what's what. But the size of the balls that you need to go in and do what he did in front of the fiance and just be like, yeah, she's mine. I don't know what to tell you. Just deal with it. I love that scene. Have you seen Meet Joe Black?
Yeah, it's like the same sort of thing. I think that movie's got some like extremely memorable moments. And I had this weird theory that like you really only need 3 incredibly memorable scenes tied together by some decent moments to make a movie good. Yeah. which I don't know.
Could be Meet Joe Black, because it's almost a 3-hour movie, I think, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of filler in there.
I don't think my theory is really tied to any sort of like filmmaking course or anything. I don't think there's a ton of filmmakers who would think it was crazy. But
wait, you're not going to be on what's that website? What is it?
I know what you're talking about. Where they have like David Lynch and Ron Howard.
If you want to be an author, if you want to be
No, I will. I can almost assure you I'll never be asked to
stop.
give some sort of filmmaking work course.
Knock it off. Adrian will just smack you right now for saying that. That's not true at all, man.
Yeah, no, but I do. Meet Joe Black's like one of those ones too, where it had some really memorable moments, and I feel the same way about like Benjamin Button. Like,
yeah.
But there's something about like those running scenes, and then like rain. I feel like rain plays a part.
Well, always, because you're wet, you're uncomfortable, but damn it, you're gonna do what you have set out to do, and you're gonna accomplish that goal.
Have you seen Breakfast at Tiffany's?
It's been a long time.
So that's like probably my top. It's somewhere in the top 5 like favorite movies of all time. But there's the scene at the end where like her cat gets away, and she goes running after it, and then he comes running after her, and they find the cat and they kiss in the rain, and the cat is like smashed between them, which always makes me uncomfortable because I'm afraid they're gonna like destroy this cat after they've done. But it's like a great scene. It's like way ahead of its time too, because visually that scene to me like just plays like it's ahead of its time. But anyway, again, like I feel like your audience right now has turned this off, and we're going to be getting like comments on Facebook. They know that like,
if I go off track, the train eventually gets back where it needs to go. We find the train station, so they know.
Good. Oh, there's another. Just as long as we're talking about running scenes, the scene in Can't Hardly Wait, which I also consider like one of these great movies that no one seems to recognize anymore. But there's the scene where Jennifer Love Hewitt's about to get on the train or whatever, or to go off, and Ethan Embry comes running into the train station to stop her. And Ethan Embry, by the way, one of my all-time favorite actors. I got to stand next to him at a con last year, and I was too nervous to ask him for an autograph.
Do you think any of his essence slipped into you through osmosis?
No, I hope not, because he's no. I really hope not. It's funny because like when I was in LA, the first question I asked Adam when I met him was, I said, so why did you cast Eerie in The Guest and then kill him off after 2 minutes? Because he's only in the movie for 2 minutes. And I found out that it was just like this crazy thing where Adam, I don't even think realized who he was when he cast him in the movie. He just like put him in the movie later. It was like, oh yeah, there's Ethan Embry.
Right.
And Ethan Embry showed up in that movie, and I was like, no way, I'm gonna meet a guy that directed Ethan Embry.
You're like, I gotta get over it.
Yeah. It is funny too, because at one point Ethan Embry was following me on Twitter because I trolled him like 3 times about something.
He was following you, so he's not following you anymore?
No, I think he blocked me now. But it's okay. It's a love-hate relationship.
That's how Seth rolls. I like it. Stalker mode. All right.
Yeah.
Hey,
yeah.
I mean, you get tidbits where you can,
Yeah, you take what you can get.
Exactly. We're all in that boat, at least for now.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Was that Heather Mosier, by the way?
Yes, I believe so. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
She's awesome. She's one of the coolest.
Yes. I was really just a shout out to everybody that put the questions down in here. I was like, man, you guys did all the work for me because all the questions were so good that I was like, well, you kind of did my job for me there. Thank you. I mean, you're always an easy
being
interview,
a host.
but yeah. I'm like, oh, I can fire myself now. It would. So Jamie was asking, and this is a one of the good closers, but I have one more question for you after this. Mm-hmm. Is where can one purchase and watch the Bray Road Beast?
Amazon and Vimeo on demand, and available on DVD on October 5th. Unless you're a Kickstarter backer, in which case you already got digital copies of this movie last week, over the weekend, and DVD copies one day. So there'll be 2 Kickstarter backers before the end of the week. This is why people need to back the Kickstarters, because we send this stuff out so far in advance. It's getting insane.
Right. No, there's a lot of good perks to being a backer.
Yes.
Okay, so this is my question. This can be any of you guys' films, all of the experiences that you've had. If you yourself, Seth, could be any of the witnesses to have that experience that witness had, who would you be?
Oh, wow. That's a really good question. Because, like, you wouldn't want it to be one of these traumatic events, but at the same time, like, some of those events are of, like, the most interesting sort of phenomena.
Right. And
so,
they have the confirmation, right? That's what's tricky about it. And I totally get it. Yeah, go ahead. You're
immediately going to roll out someone like the guy in Invasion at Chestnut Ridge, where he was being abducted, his grandson were being abducted.
Yeah, not fun.
But, yeah, that's a great question. You know what? Like, I think it'd be something simple. Like, I think I would have liked to have been. Now, is this a situation where I can just trade places with them, or is it like I literally have to be them? This is key.
At least for that moment, because for that moment it would be that confirmation of that that cryptid, that creature.
I think I would want to be one of the Caton kids.
I love you
from Minerva.
Saying that. I love you for saying that, and I thought you would. Yes, because
like because like they had a very sort of like playful relationship with whatever in the woods behind their house, like other than a couple crazy incidents and their poor dog passing on to the next life. But like they had a very almost like they had a like some sort of report or whatever was back there. And like like Adam Dugan and I were in Area X for 2.5 days, and while we were there on the last night there, we experienced something throw a rock and then scream at our tent, and it was like just activity to move me toward like 80% that there's something out there, but not enough to move me all the way because I didn't get to see it. Right. And I feel like being one of the Catons and actually getting to see something would have moved me, like just that little bit further. But yeah, I think it's funny because like you've got the Flatwood story and all these like really crazy encounter stories, but I think it always will probably come back to Minerva.
Yeah. I love that you said that. I was wondering if you would, and that for me, having gone through the journey of just watching you guys' films and watching all the interviews, I'm kind of going, I wonder which one I would want to be. And I completely agree. The situations that the Catons were going through with the Minerva monster would be just enough to where you wouldn't be going bonkers and need a padded room, but it would be enough for a confirmation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They had, and I mean, they still seem to think whatever there is still there, and that they still have a good relationship with it. So
they're still there.
Good on them.
Are you guys going to go back out there then? Is there enough going on to do something like that?
I mean, like, this is the thing that bugs me about the Midwest trilogy that we're in the middle of making, like right now, is that it would have been the perfect time to do a remake of Minerva Monster. And, like I would have done it, to be honest, like to be perfectly upfront. I would have done it if I could have gotten Howie back. Just because there's enough pieces to that story that we didn't get to explore that I think should be explored. And, if you can imagine what we did with that original movie, but on our, like the new sort of visuals that we can employ now, like I think we could do something really cool with it. And I probably would still go the no narration route with that particular story. And just not, like it would be a remake in a lot of ways, I think. But unfortunately, like Howie's just kind of out of the picture now. I mean, we talk occasionally, but he doesn't really want to do it. He's done it, and he's had his say, so he feels like he's done. So I probably, at this point, even though I know for the last, like, I've been saying I would remake it, I think right now, the way things stand, I probably won't get to. But there is, there's enough stuff there that you could do a remake. I don't think you could make some sort of sequel because the main story is that 1978 stuff. Yeah. And then everything else kind of spills out from there. But I just wish we could go back and do a movie that delves into some of the other aspects of that story and we never got to. Just like the mother's relationship with whatever was in the woods and how it sort of seemed to be, protective of her, and how the kids felt when she died, and like how the activity did continue on. The movie I would make would be much less of like a rah-rah Bigfoot movie, which I feel like Minerva Monster in the last like 15 minutes becomes a rah-rah Bigfoot movie, in part because of who edited it and produced it. And, like there was a certain element of like, we got to support the Ohio Bigfoot Conference going on.
Right.
Like with the editing of it. And if I could go back and redo it, it would have been much more about the Catons and, like their personal story. And it definitely wouldn't have opened with, 15 minutes of local history. That local history would have been condensed and distilled. But I'm glad, it doesn't bother, obviously it's not going to bother me when people tell me that's their favorite movie of ours. There's things about that movie that I still do think work fairly well. And other things I can't even bring myself to watch about it. I still feel like the sound and stuff in that movie is just horrendous, but I do really like the opening still. The shots around the Caton house while you hear clips of the witnesses that are going to come later in the movie.
Yes.
I think that's a really cool idea. And I liked the shots that were done in that scene, and the 70s zoom up into the woods as the title comes up. Like that was all sort of something I dreamed up, and literally dreamed up, by the way. I was laying in bed and that entire opening came to me.
Really?
Yeah, and the same thing happened last night for Terror in the Skies. In fact,
you have to use it.
I sat up and I wrote the entire thing down because it's a very detailed opening, and I texted it to everyone, so I didn't forget it. So sometimes that's the way to go.
Look at you just channeling stuff. That's a little paranormal right there, isn't it?
Oh yeah. Yeah, it was given to me by the ghost of Orson Welles.
Totally. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I can hear that voice right now.
Citizen Seth.
Running after somebody in the rain.
Mm-hmm.
Like a fool.
Or my favorite 1930s director, George Wolfman.
Yeah, George Wolfman. It's George Wolfman. Boogity, boogity, boo. Now we're just melding everything together now. It's like a melting pot of crazy. Yeah, so.
It's good though. We don't get to. I feel it's funny because I've known you longer than pretty much anyone other than like members of my crew. I've known you longer than almost everyone that I'm involved in this stuff with. But we rarely talk on the phone. We talk like maybe 3 or 4 times a year.
Yeah.
So this for me is always like catch up time.
I know, and the listeners are going to pay for that. And I don't care.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what they don't get. They're probably going, Shannon, I mean, come on. But I'm like, look, y'all are going to deal with it. That's how it is. I mean, we text and we're always like caught up with things, but we don't actually talk. So
no, we rarely actually get to communicate verbally. It's always like texts back and forth.
Yeah. No, this is nice.
It is. This is like tea and crumpets with Shannon.
High fives in the rain? Is that a thing? I don't know.
I don't know. It should be. Now I want to see a movie where I'm still racking my brain for like other scenes like that, because there was this whole I used to have all these theories about like film, like my favorite, or not theories, but like my, I categorized everything. I had like my favorite small town movies, because there were all these movies that were set in small towns with like small town romances, or like kids getting bored in small towns when I was growing up. And then there was always like, I had millions of people running through the rain. So I'm going to have to make a list.
Have you watched Castle Rock on Hulu?
I haven't watched it yet.
Yeah, it's like based in the Stephen King universe. It's pretty good.
It looks great, and I have this weird relationship with Stephen King where I typically cannot stand his books. Mm-hmm. However, his on writing, the Stephen King on writing, I own 8 copies. It's probably my absolute favorite book. And I find him to be like the most inspirational worker, like in terms of his work ethic, like
right.
That aspect of his personality really inspires me. So like and also I love the movie The Shining, which apparently he hates.
I find that so odd, because he gives stamps of approval to all kinds of things, but not to The Shining.
Yeah, it's strange. It's such a great movie. Yeah.
Well, I mean, Bill Skarsgård, who played Pennywise in the newest iteration of It, of course,
Right.
is in Castle Rock. I mean, he's one of the stars of the show, and you're kind of going, oh man, do I see Pennywise right there. I mean,
So
just
are
his
they?
look.
I mean, is it tied to all? Like, is it tangentially sort of tied to them, or
all kinds of stuff? It's
okay?
It's based around Shawshank, and like the warden there, he ends up. I mean, I'm not going to give anything away for anybody, but it's tied into all sorts of things. And in fact, the intro itself, it mentions like Cujo and The Shining and It and Shawshank and The Green Mile. Like all of these things are tied in, and there's just Easter egg galore. And I'm sure that I haven't even picked up on a quarter of it. I'll probably watch it back or look it up in Google or something.
Yeah. I have to check it out then.
It's really good. I would like to see what you think about it. Some of it drags on a little bit, like most shows can, and you're kind of going, okay, let's get something going. But I'm sure that there's so much backstory and little Easter eggs that it's just a lot of stuff that I'm missing.
Yeah. I'm gonna catch up on it. It's like one of those. Right now, I'm like weirdly into all these sort of true crime Netflix docs, which like
Did you watch The Staircase?
So yeah, I watched The Staircase, and it's funny because that's the one everyone keeps asking me about. I liked it, but I didn't love it. And I think the reason I didn't love it is I could not find any character in the show to care about. I just couldn't. There was no one in, and I know they're not characters like they're real people, but like
right.
I couldn't latch on to any of the people until the last 2 episodes, and then you kind of like, I guess you kind of come on sort of the main guy, although, you know, I guess it depends on how you feel about him and his guilt or innocence. But I liked it a lot, and I found myself after the fact really thinking about it a lot. The best that I watched was The Keepers. Oh my gosh, like it wrecked me. I watched it over. Actually, I watched it flying to Washington with Mark Matsky and then flying back from on the plane. So I watched the entire thing on an airplane, and it wrecked me. And I still think about it quite a bit. Like just find myself thinking about the case and like the girl, and it was just a great story. And I really loved Evil Genius, which I taught like a 2-hour film course at our local library, and I used that show as sort of like an example of how story is the most important aspect of your film, not visuals. Because that movie, that show did great. It's very like, I don't say that as an insult. It's shot like verite style, and it's very immediate and taking place in the now, and it feels like it was shot by a news shooter. But the story is so fascinating, and the characters are so interesting that you're like sucked into it. And I go back to shows like that when it comes to like visuals and making sure that like the characters in your story are the most important aspect of what you're doing.
When is Making a Murderer, like the second season, coming out? Is that still not in cement? That's going to happen.
See, that was like one where I watched. I don't know. I think they're filming now for a second season.
Okay,
but I also don't. Finished it. My wife watched the entire thing, and I watched pieces of it here and there, but I found myself checking out toward the end of that first season. I remember I binged a bunch of episodes right out of the gate, and then I kind of lost interest. I'm telling you, if you haven't seen The Keepers, you really need to. It is super disturbing and a little depressing, but it's also really it's really emotional. Like it's just emotional. Just prepare emotional roller coaster, because that was kind of my reaction to it. There is a point, I think around the 3rd or 4th episode, where I felt like I thought that they had strayed a little too far from the main sort of plot of the overall show. But it really probably is my favorite of all those Netflix series that I've been watching.
Why isn't Mr. Boogedy on Netflix? That's what I want to know.
I don't know, but you can watch the entire thing on YouTube, because I looked it up and it's on there.
Only if people have the Google Chromecast will they like that, because then you have to watch it on your usually on your little screen, unless you have a PlayStation or something, right?
Roku. It's on Roku.
Oh,
If you have a
okay.
smart TV, you'll be good.
Yeah, that's true.
Just watch it on your phone.
I don't know. I hear some people don't like that when you watch their stuff on a phone, and then you can't experience the whole thing.
I don't know. Our movies. I've thought about that before, and I don't necessarily. I think I mind like whichever way people take it in is fine by me. Like our movies are definitely made for people who want to show on their phone.
No matter what. I like it.
Go ahead, check it out.
Be open to that. It's okay.
Yeah.
I'm sure that once we stop recording, he will have a completely different opinion for everybody. I'm just kidding.
Which of ours like is your favorite? I mean, other than Minerva, obviously, but like after Minerva, which is kind of like the follow-up?
This one.
Oh, really?
It just seems so different to me. And not that any of them were, this is just another small town. Like they're all the same. They're not. But this one really does stand out. It honestly does.
Awesome.
Yeah. So everyone needs to watch it. It's amazing. And it does make you want to go out and just and talk to people. And, or maybe that's just me because I seem to do that anyway. But, and it makes me just miss being in the woods and having the option of even having an experience like that. Like I'm watching the interviews and I'm going, oh, yeah, I'm in the desert. I can see some tortoises. That's great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
You got skies though. You've got skies
Not
for
around
days.
Vegas though. I can't see.
That's true.
I can see like 8 stars, maybe.
A lot of light
sometime.
pollution. You got vampires living in abandoned houses though.
Oh, I'm sure I do. Vampires and heroin addicts. I mean, take your pick. I don't know.
Yeah.
Of course, every town has that.
That was my Fright Night reference for the day.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Yes. Is that running in the rain in that? I'm sure. The fangs out.
Yeah, there might be one of those.
All right, let everybody know where they can find you and Small Town Monsters.
Smalltownmonsters.com, Facebook.com/SMLTownMonsters. Twitter is small
SML. Mm-hmm.
Is it? Okay, there
Yeah.
you go. SML Town Monsters. And Instagram is, I think, small_town_monsters, if I'm not mistaken. And then shop.sponsor DVDs of our stuff or shirts or posters or soundtracks by the inimitable Brandon Dalo.
Yes.
And let me think, what else do we got? I think that Amazon has a lot of our stuff. So we get asked this question now. Like, people want to know, if we watch your movies free on Amazon, do you get paid? And the short answer is yes. The longer answer is we get paid. We just don't get paid what we should get. So if you really like our stuff, feel free to watch it free, pick your favorite, and then buy a DVD.
Yeah.
And that helps support Small Town Monsters. Or you can just back the Kickstarter when it launches in February.
Yes. Do you have an exact date for that launch?
February 7th.
Okay.
Yeah, we do that. We'll do like a live radio broadcast and all that stuff, and pimp the show and talk about things and stuff, and it'll be great. And it'll probably run through it 3 hours.
It does, just like this. I was like, I won't keep you long. It's like 2 hours later. I'm like, oh gosh, sorry.
Yeah, but I told you, like, for me, this really is like relaxing. Like, I don't feel like I have to be on or, I don't know how to put it nicely, but I don't feel like I have to put on, when I'm talking to you. It's just kind of like two buddies talking.
Thanks a lot, Seth. God.
So it's more relaxing than if I had to, do like a really in-depth interview with someone I didn't know who didn't know how to talk to me.
No, I appreciate that. That's what I was always hoping for when I was doing a show, is everybody's just chill. We're just having a little conversation. So, of course, it's a little bit more like that with us. We know each other quite well. So I miss being in Ohio. Everyone, are you coming to Mothman? Are you coming to this? You coming to that? I'm like, I miss being in driving distance of everybody and everything. That was incredible about being in Ohio.
I know. And it was such a period of time, too.
Yep, it was. And I fit as much as I could in that short period of time, but I'm grateful for the time that I had, so. Oh, see, we're running in the rain now.
Good.
I'm getting all misty.
Yeah, we're running together.
Yes. Yeah, high five right to the old smacker. Yeah.
High fives in the rain should be the title of the episode.
It would be amazing to throw people off. They're like, what the hell? She likes to title things like tied into the what that she talked about, kind of to make it real. Ooh, but high fives in the rain? That doesn't sound too spooky.
It's horrifying.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, Seth. Well, hello to Bubby, Ramona, Tommy, and of course, Adrian. And I hope you guys have a wonderful night there in Ohio.
Thanks. You too.
Thank you, good sir.